So what I'd like to do is to do a bit of an interview of our latest member, Jason, about his business to see if there's ways in which we can help him. There's somebody that's not on this call, but actually shared something with me yesterday. And I'm going to speak to her this afternoon. And that's Rebecca. Rebecca Noakes is an architectural photographer that was with us for quite a while. She's taken a break. She said, hopefully back in April, I'll be back. I don't know whether that's going to be the case, but either way, she could be really good because she's her target audience is architects. And she's been working quite solidly on those. And I know I think that's sure. So I want to find out a little bit more. Jason, I've known for well over 20 years, know his mum, know the family, been to parties at his place. And although we haven't stayed in that regular touch, we've been aware of one another. And Jason came to me just before Christmas to say, somebody's offered me a job. Anybody that's known him recently will know he's quite an entrepreneur. He's very sharp, very savvy with his contribution. And somehow thought I might be helped with my sort of corporate background. I think he'd do well on his own anyway, whatever. So, Jason, do you want to tell us about this new assignment, this new role that you've got and how you're approaching it? What is it, first of all? What is it you require? What is your position, and who is your target audience?
Well, thank you, Paul.
What does your company do?
Yeah, just before that, what I will say, just a reminder for everybody, the reason that I reached out to you is because you'd unexpectedly shown up in my LinkedIn profile. And I know that we hadn't probably spoken for 5 years, 10 years. And actually, you did a piece around your first job interview, and you shared a piece of video on LinkedIn. And obviously it reminded me about you, first of all. I don't know why it showed up in my feed amongst my thousands of contacts, but it did. And also just the fact that it was so good. It reminded me about you, and hence I'm actually technically a customer again. So that's just a reminder of the power of keep sharing ideas and stories on LinkedIn, because that specifically brought me to the group now. As a company, so the company is called Glatthaar Keller, and they're a large German organization. They've been in business for 40 years. They've delivered over 70,000 construction projects, and predominantly their specialism is in precast manufactured off-site basements. But they also do a big part of their business in Germany and the rest of mainland Europe is that they deliver the concrete foundations for the timber frame construction companies. So that's their area of speciality is the concrete and the steel work. So they've got teams of their own guys that will actually either dig the holes or they subcontract the actual dig, and then their men will put steel work in and put the concrete in. And then if you're having a basement, they'll have made that in their factory in Germany, and they've got 2 or 3 factories, and it will be trucked over to the UK. And then the way that I've been connected with them is that a friend of mine he'd retired from his role at KPMG, and he was living in Germany at the time. He got a German wife and his children over here. And he just happened to be at a business function, and he passed some comment about hearing he heard a guy speaking English. And he made the comment, oh, it was great English. And then they got chatting, and turned out that this guy was a director of the company, and they were looking for a UK sales manager. And that was 10 years ago. And my friend is now retiring in the next 18 months. So he's been tasked with finding and training his replacement. They put me forward, and it looked all good. And then lockdown came and nothing happened for a year. And then just before Christmas, they called me, and here I am now. So I'm actually, as shared earlier, I'm in the office of the lead estimator. So I've had to drive an hour this morning, and I'm doing spreadsheets of how I work out the pricing of a 150 square meter basement.
So before you carry on, so the company, somebody requires a basement, there may be, it might be in a new build that the whole construction know that they're going to do a basement, or somebody wants to extend downwards, which I believe is quite popular in London, because they can't expand upwards, they want to go downwards. Your company will do all of that, and do they pre-construct the basement and drop it in, or, well, you can't, I suppose.
You can't, which is a great question and great point. No, they don't. They won't go underneath any existing structure. So
Right.
it's only for new build or basement conversion. So let's say that you have a house and you don't want to move, but you want more space. What you can actually do is have your garden or driveway or patio lifted, and then they can put in a basement and then return it again. So you can get yourself another 50 or 100 square meters. And a great question there, Ollie. I'm really thinking that the bunker market is something that's probably going to become ever more interesting for people. So the one thing to be sure is, generally people won't buy a basement on its own, and certainly as a company we do the concrete shell and the finished structure, provide all the warranty of the waterproofing, and then someone else will go and finish it. So just in the way that a bricklayer may build a wall, you still need your builder to do all the internal work. So that's hence the reason that a big part of what we do is aimed at partnerships. And so my job is certainly that there's a growing trend for what's known as the timber frame houses. It's big in Germany. Apparently some 20% of the build in Germany is timber frame. It's a smaller amount in the UK, but certainly with everyone's energy bills doubling and tripling, there's going to become now a much larger part of the market, and awareness is that the traditional build on a house still costs a lot of money to heat. And only recently I learned that you've probably heard of the term passive house. But the passive house standards are German standards, where if you have 4 people in a house and it's built to passive house standards, the only energy you require is to heat the water for your showers. But the body heat generated by 4 people is enough to heat a 3-bedroom house if it's fully insulated. And then you have heat exchangers, like taking the temperature from the air as it circulates. And so I think that it's just simply something that's going to become, the timing's really good for what I'm doing. And they can actually build a basement underground with enough insulation for it to meet these passive house standards.
All right, we're getting a little bit technical here for
technical
us
there, sorry, yeah.
people. So the market really is for new builds.
Yes.
It's not so much for conversions. So somebody wants to, right.
So that's a great point. So on the new build front, historically, again, it's the self-build market. Advertise as many as 12,000 people a year build their own house in the UK. Well, obviously they wouldn't literally build it; they would hire the architect and/or the builder. But it's where you take a plot of land and you build your own house. So that's actually a fairly developed market.
So that's a sector in itself. I've not thought about that yet.
Yeah, that's a sector. So, and there's the National Self-Build Centre at Swindon is a really good place. It's a huge warehouse with a load of house builders in it. The company used to spend money there, but they were doing like 15 to 20,000 a year and not really getting much of a return on investment. So they pulled out of that. But I'm considering pushing them to go back. But that's the kind of outbound. That's paid marketing to encourage inbound leads. Would be if anyone wants to build a house, then you're going to spend time specifying what you want in it. And then the other way to do it is where I'm attempting to go, is to reach out to the professionals who would be engaged by people who are looking to build their own house. This whole point of this call is to find the people who have the audience. So if you're an architect or a surveyor or a planner, you'll have done your own local marketing, and people will come to you asking you to design and build them a house. And I want to know that myself and my company are top of their pocketbook to say, yeah, let us tender on this. And but the last big kind of hurdle for me is simply that basements are not a thing here. So let me ask you, just to poll the call, who on the call now has a basement that they use in their house? Anybody? And it's just not a thing. And yet in Germany, I live in a terrace house in a regular street, and there's probably 200 houses that were built at the same time. Everyone's got a basement. It's the full footprint of the house. So one of the challenges is the historical, or just culturally, it's not generally a thing. And yes, exactly. Charlotte said, yeah, they're big in Sweden, Scandinavia, Germany, Switzerland. And nowadays it's not as much it's not that much more expensive to get a basement put in than historically it has been more. It can be as much as twice the price per square foot. But now, given the massive increase in costs for houses and building, it's actually becoming relative to the cost of the house something. So for me, I'm also thinking about how I can actually create the demand that's not necessarily there. So part of it is if someone's made the decision to get a basement, then great, I want to be able to put forward what we do. But also for the people that are maybe spending £200,000 or £300,000 or £400,000 getting a house built, but hadn't thought about a basement. And a basement can be anywhere from a single room, like 30 or 40 square meters, right up to the full footprint of the house.
Okay. Ollie had a point, and so did Nick. Ollie.
My question was, what's all I can think of is a beer cellar, but what's the general kind of use which people would consider a basement for, in terms of thinking of the kind of people that would want one?
So what you've exactly right, something like a beer cellar, and if you've ever worked in a pub, or you kind of generally you think of basements as being cold and dark and damp. And nowadays, with the modern construction methods, and particularly what we do, your basement can end up being the warmest part of the house. So actually, you can have I'm thinking of doing a video series, 101 uses of a basement. Yes, if you're uber rich, you can have a swimming pool and a sauna and a snooker room and so many other things. But it's also actually can just be extend your living space. It can be a self-contained apartment, but it will be as warm and dry and even as well lit as the average house. Because to have a light well, it doesn't have much more money, but generally, just if you were offered the chance of another floor in your house, what would you do with it? And that's where you can put anything in a basement. But yeah, great point.
Okay, Nick.
Yeah, I think Jason's possibly answered my question. I was just going to ask about how you get light into what is obviously probably going to be a very dark and dingy place, but you're saying there are light wells and new technology now that can stream natural light into a basement?
Yeah, if you think about it, particularly in some of the older cities, I don't know if it's big in Bristol or not, but obviously many areas of London, a lot of houses were built with basement apartments in any way, so the windows might be higher up on the wall.
Yeah,
that's one way. So you actually you can have a smaller window that's near the top of the wall, but you can actually as well, you can have a full height. So many of the larger basements have which is effectively a terrace. So the full hole will be dug, and then there's a secondary wall, and you might have 2 or 3 meters of space that's at the same level, and then stairs up to your garden or your patio. That lets all the light in.
Okay, I can't remember who was first. Let's say Tracy and then Charlotte.
Jason, have you thought about speaking to local authorities or housing associations that are looking to build new houses and stuff, and whether that would be a design difference that they might want to kind of bring into their cities?
Thank you, Tracy. Well, to be fair, that's probably where I need to step up a bit, because at the moment I'm thinking, oh no, I'm not. I could talk to one person and one builder, and I think certainly here in Germany, it's a bigger thing, and they've got experience of building on multiple sites. It does tend to be that the larger developments where you've got really big, 200 or 300, 400 apartments going up at once, they're more likely the builder would do their own. They would do it as part of the whole build rather than have a specialist like us come in on that. But it's something I haven't explored here, and I think as we all know, the massive housing demand there's certainly that would be a really good a way forward, is to think about, well, actually, how do I approach it, and who could I talk to? So yeah, that would be definitely worth me following up on that. Thank you.
Charlotte.
Yeah, do you work worldwide then, Jason? So do you work with, another question was about sustainability, because I know sort of contacts within Sweden who work really heavily on keeping those kind of buildings sustainable and new energy and solutions for that sort of thing. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, certainly. It's not so worldwide, but definitely European. So their factories in North and South Germany, they do truck. I know that Scanda House is one of the companies that do build in the UK, and they have delivered for them before. But what I'm also appreciating is because within the larger companies, there's often many people involved, and people come and go all the time. So even if historically they may have done some work for a company, that connection can easily be lost. So yeah, it's kind of up to me to reconnect with those. But I think that's also a great point of bringing some of the case studies from other countries to the UK and reminding people actually this is suddenly more affordable than you might have thought.
Especially I'm thinking with the sustainability of energy.
Yes.
Especially with the costs going up as much as they are. I think, yeah, I was wondering if that might be a good sort of partnership for you.
Yeah, I think historically the energy cost thing is very much we all know about it and we know we should, but is it real? But I'll give you an example. I'm in Germany with my wife. Our heating bill, we were paying 1,200 euros a year, and when the letter came 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we've now got to pay it's almost 4,000 euros a year. So it's gone more than trebled in one single jump, and this was before what's happening in Ukraine had started. Well, actually, an extra £3,000 a year over just 10 years is another £30,000 worth of heating bills. So all of a sudden, if you're spending 200 or 300 or 400 getting a house built, actually to spend an extra 5 to 10% at the front end could then genuinely save you money over the term and give you all the extra space. And so it's a long-term play, but this is, as Paul shared here, for me to put my hand up and say I'm going to get a job was a bit of a turnaround, but I think it's kind of I've got a 10-year plan on this. So they're doing around 20 to 25 a year in the UK, and I would like to. I'm aiming for. There's no reason why they can't 10 times that. There's no reason why they couldn't do 200 a year in the UK. They've got the capacity to do that.
Okay, Rod, you've got a point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is perfect timing, Jason, because every time I look at a new development these days, the footprint's getting smaller and the height of the property is getting higher. And so consequently, it's sort of logical, really, that going down is the only way forward, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So
right.
it's just making the awareness, improving the awareness and to your audience, and your audience is too diverse and too big for you to go at all of them. But maybe what's his name, Clark's program on the TV, maybe you need a case study that's
George Clark, yeah.
By one of the the property open spaces type, the programs I mean.
Yeah. They've been on Grand Designs a couple of times with some of their larger stuff.
Grand Designs, that's it. Yeah.
It's more the mainstream that I do need to tap into, but it's really encouraging.
You made the main point you made there was that you're after the self-build market, of which there are about 12,000. Interestingly, I've just read recently that the main house builders, somebody's called them out to say it's all a cartel. Your Barretts and the world. So that's not that's not who you're after, because they'd probably be, if they wanted to go that route, they'd be able to do it themselves. So just very briefly, what is it what extra value do you bring that somebody themselves can't do it themselves?
Yeah, definitely the primary angle that we have, because there are people that will build you a basement. There have been many horror stories, and that's one of the things. A lot of architects, their professional indemnity cover doesn't cover them to do basement work. So and there's one kind of fairly large famous company in London that apparently goes through a bit of a phoenix syndrome every 3 or 4 years. Every time they have a basement go wrong, they start again. So one of the challenges is getting across the fact that you do need to invest a bit more upfront in getting something that's of quality. But as a company, we provide a full 10-year company-backed warranty. We've got the track record of thousands and thousands of projects. We've got many hundreds in the UK that you can come and visit. And the key way that we add value is the fact that the speed of what we do. So once the concrete's been laid and the foundation slab has been created, it actually only takes about 3 or 4 hours for all the walls and ceiling slabs to be craned into place. Then there's one more concrete pour. So we can do in 4 to 5 weeks what historically can take 4 to 5 months. So from a commercial development point of view, that's a real win. And secondly, from a weather, regardless of the weather, we don't have to stop for frost or rain or anything untoward like that, because they're all done in a factory in a controlled environment. So it's a much higher quality product with a full warranty.
Sounds good. Nick?
Yeah, Jason, just so I'm clear, do you see your company offering, so an architect would work with you to deliver that part of the build? So they would still take the ownership of the overall build, but you would input into the basement element of the build? Or am I getting that completely wrong?
No, not at all. No, great question, Nick. One of the challenges I have is that if anyone's got any exposure to the building industry, you'll appreciate there are many different layers of responsibility. So I'm fortunate enough that my wife's an architect, and I've been through some of that process. But there's what they call the REBA, the 7 stages of a build, and an architect will often get involved at the first 1, 2, 3, or 4 stages, and that might just be to planning and producing a set of drawings, and then the client will then engage someone else to a senior, they call it the principal contractor, to actually manage the liability of the build. But sometimes the architects do it, and sometimes they don't do it. And sometimes it's handled by a project manager, and sometimes it's handled by a surveyor. Sometimes it's handled by a company. And so the easiest way, where people have agreed to hire one of the existing timber frame companies, so it could be Scander House, it could be Balfritz, it could be Huff House. Generally, they'll pay a fixed fee, and that one company will be the principal contractor. And then they will either they'll engage us, or they'll put us in touch with the client, and the client pays our fee. But there's already a working relationship. But you're right, that's I have a stack of 120 planning applications that we've had someone in the admin team go and find that have all got basements in them. But there's the client on that, then there's the planning agent, then there's the architect that did the initial plans, then there can be a different architect that does any conditions and amendments. And then, so I've got to call through 1, 2, 3, or 4 different people, find out who's actually the responsible person for producing the tender statement of exactly what you want, and then deciding who to go with. So that's where
presumably, Jason, the architect has got to have an awareness of the technical, what you can deliver technically with
correct. Yes, yeah. It's for them to specify. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So having exposure and for architects to have awareness of what you do is, I guess, pretty high up on your list of.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. And that's I'm thinking in the future maybe some kind of CPD and type, or offering that as a service to some of the larger architect practices. But then there's actually getting involved in there's obviously architects organizations. So that's kind of where I need to start to show up without being a salesman. I've got to show up and know that I'm there to help them solve their problems that they might have with their clients, rather than just try and buy my stuff.
Very often when we're doing this sort of one-to-one or group session, it's a matter of finding a bit of the detail, which is beyond most of us because you're not dealing with people who share that same audience. But it's also trying to understand who those potential people are that are responsible, that you need to get in touch with before this decision is made. So far, you've talked about planners, surveyors, architects, presumably other people involved in the building industry. You mentioned about the Swindon Self-Build Centre. I've actually been in there. I can't remember why at all, but I've been in there. I wasn't never thinking about building my own. But the question I would ask is, why did it fail? Because if that's where the audience goes to, and they pulled out because they weren't getting the results, why were they not getting the results? Was it that the person representing them was fairly rubbish? Were they only half-hearted? Are there anybody in that group, in that centre? Is there anybody in that centre that could act as an affiliate or as a joint venture partner without you having to go in? In other words, there are some potential partners that. Yeah,
I think that's.
I'm sure you've thought about that.
Yeah. Well, that's one avenue I want to go. So the idea is the house builders themselves, and in the centre there's probably 7 or 8 of them. And one approach I've been considering is to say to them, if I can get the right person on the phone, is rather than us spend our advertising budget and pay it to the self-build centre, I'd rather offer it to you as an incentive for specifying us when you build your house. So that's really, I think, obviously from a referral perspective, I'd like introductions to builders that do houses, because again, this is a specialist in the way a builder will hire an electrician, they might hire a plumber, they might hire a roofing contractor. So the main builder as a term will effectively manage the project, and they'll hire the specialist trades. and then it's the architects and the academic professionals that people engage at the beginning of the process.
Okay.